saved?
I don't know.
It's
They're
very,
worth
very good
saving, like
question.
they say.
They
Are
Um,
should
you a
be saved
fan
for
of
people who
like?
pick them.
Are you a fan of web cuck comics by chance?
Not not web cuck comics, no. I used to. That was the thing. Is like when I got on the internet, it was a long ass time ago. Um, I found web comics, and I was like, oh, cool, like Sluggy Freelance. I was like, oh, cool. This it's like a newspaper sort of daily comic strip that's just on a website, and so I was like, hey, it was like one of my first ever bookmarks on Nutscrape. So I was like, oh, that's cool, and it was cool to keep up with something that was updating every single day and actually had a serialized storyline. So it was like continuing story. And it's like, wow, this is really cool to keep up with a comic that, is just a sort of bite-sized thing. So it was like, get up every day and check this one website that has, a new page or something. It's like, wow, it's really cool. And I always liked that. And I always kind of wanted to do something like that myself because I always figured there was a lot of other people doing web comics, and they didn't have to be any good because anyone could just make a website. So it was, the standard for quality was based on how much people liked the thing. It was, this was around 2000, so it's still very early days of, you couldn't push a really bad comic ahead with, preachy morality, virtue signaling, our morality is better because we're like this, or any political view. It was just like, here's how good the art was. What's really sad is one of my other favorite web comics at the time was Living in Greytown by Dave Kelly, who later is better known as Schmorky, who is just like now just known as a diaper fur. And it's like, oh, that's pretty tragic because he had quite the drop off over the ensuing 10 years. But I remember liking Living in Greytown, back in around 2000. And again, it was something I looked at and was like, I want to kind of do that, but I couldn't draw. But I knew somebody who could draw, and we did a few goofy little comics together. But it wasn't like it's pretty much disappeared forever. But it was like still an early start for wanting to. I mean, before then, I had some interest in comics, when I was early teenager. Me and my brother would just draw comics, on it with ballpoint pen in lined notebooks. We would just draw these really sloppy. It was just awful art and stuff, and I still have them though. And that was incredibly fun to do just as a hobby. And even before then, like in third or fourth grade, I think it was also in like second grade. There would be like a school project or class project where it's like write your own story with using like 10 sentences, and then they would print it out into like little pieces of paper. And then it was like now they would provide a bunch of space on the page above your sentence on each page for you to draw yourself. So like the school was encouraging you to make your own comics, and me and my brother just loved that. And we would draw like Mario comics, like Mario jumps over Bowser's head and hits the axe, and Bowser falls into the lava. It's just that goofy shit.
I'm
And
going
then
to interrupt you real quick since we never actually said hello to everybody.
oh
And
yeah, that's right.
we have people pouring in. How exciting. Hi everybody.
Oh, the stream got an advertisement on someone else's stream.
Yes, apparently. Welcome to a little bit of haven for the evening as we plan on actually talking about comics and
For a
getting
change,
comics
in
and
stark
getting
contrast.
getting comics made,
Mhm.
and what all that entails, especially here for Thomas when it came to Legends of the Snow Seas and literally number one,
That's Villains of the Snow Sea.
Villains of the Snow
Yeah.
Seas. Sorry, it's
It's
late
it's actually
already.
it is a bizarre title. In fact, apparently somebody was so angry by the title that they judged the entire comic without reading it just by the title. They were so upset by it.
I read it and I thought it was great.
Yeah, there's been a lot of people who are actually really happy to see for a lot of reasons, especially because of the main character, which you were telling me we were going to actually talk about. It's like, oh, I don't have much opportunity to talk about Laylee. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot I could. In fact, I used to on the old shitty webcomics podcasts like a bunch of years ago that were on my YouTube channel. I guess not anymore though. But I did an entire stream where I just talked about Laylee like as a character and the comic ideas I had for her, and um, just general story ideas I had for her too.
Yeah. I think she's hot.
Yeah, that was one of the main
Which is always a good starting point.
yeah.
Yeah.
She has something very specific though. Like in most American, like your boring American comic, a hot chick is like weird, stiff, awkward, hard boobs. Like their face looks like like a stop motion doll or something that just has almost no expression or anything. They
That
have no
sounds hot.
They
character.
I don't know
they
what
either
you.
have no expression or they're always making the O face. It's
Yeah.
one or it's
Those
like
are the
almost
two
really funny.
faces I want a chick to make, and only those faces.
She should only be allowed to make that face. Thing is, I wanted to make her as like an actual character. Primarily that was something that we had always talked about on the old blog on Shitty Webcomics, was that whether it was a web comic or a comic book, American comic book primarily, is female characters had no personality. There were the stock, strong female, either protagonist or sidekick or side character or whatever, that didn't really have it. Like, there's exceptions, like Chris Claremont's X-Men always had some lady characters, like Kitty Pryde or something had, she had definitely her personality to her and that kind of thing. And but the modern archetype is either the feminist, strong, powerful, blah blah whatever, or just like throwaway side character, like even in Jawbreakers, I think was a good example of just completely bland, devoid of any purpose or personality, or even like there's nothing to them in the comic that they had any purpose to the story in any way. They were just there. But that was also the same for the male character. So, it's not really that much of a standout. But
you came up with her long before you guys.
Yeah, a long time. It was like around. Well, shit, that was around like 2000 in a way. Also around that time, maybe 2002. I remember I had just a vague idea for a character, and she was really just like fantasy waifu, but 2002 era, where it's just like, what if there's a story like this, and it was like a just more of an outline than even a story, and it was so long ago that I didn't really have much after a sort of first chapter introduction for her. So it was like she didn't have a name. It was her and the male character, and they didn't have names. They didn't have designs or ideas or looks or anything. And it was more around 2010 that I started thinking. I thought of her again, and I was like, oh, that's my old OC. What if I fleshed her out and did something else with her? And at that time I was like, oh, what if oh yeah, Dean, your microphone's off again.
Yeah, no, I was just listening. I
Okay.
don't want you to hear me.
Just want to make sure, because sometimes you leave your microphone muted, and it's like you forget. We know you forget.
I don't forget.
You're
No,
talking-
that's never happened.
You're talking
always
for like a
forget.
half hour. Yeah. But yeah, Laylee wasn't even called Laylee. Like, I looked back to my oldest doodle of her, just as like, oh, this old OC. What if I did a drawing of her and like try to flesh out the idea of her character? And I just named her Jane Doe because I couldn't think of anything. Plus, it's sort of named after from Fletch, Chevy Chase's character in Fletch. He wrote under the name Jane Doe for the newspaper, and it's like that's a great pseudonym. But
it's an original pseudonym.
yeah. Also,
I like that movie.
yeah. Fletch is actually a cool movie. It's actually a bizarre movie too, because he's a journalist who's undercover going through some drug ring, and just some rich guy hires him to murder him. And it's like, okay, okay, sure, I'll do that. And then it plays out with all these other bizarre things, and then it's still at the same time a vehicle for Chevy Chase to just be like bizarre and kind of a
Yeah.
dick to everyone.
Dean doesn't know anything about it because he doesn't watch
No,
movies.
that's actually one of my favorite movies.
You're so full of
definitely.
shit, Dean.
No, yeah, I have no
You've
idea.
totally heard it. I mean, it's well, you know what's funny is that like Caddyshack came out around the same time. That's a great movie too. And I didn't see that until I was about 20, and I was like, holy shit! I wish more people. It's weird how hard those movies are to find. Like movies from the early '80s that were huge hits, but nobody knows about them anymore. It's like they've disappeared into time. It's kind of bizarre, but yeah, some real hidden treasures. But that just leads back to again Jane Doe. When I was all I really came up with was like a visual idea for the character. It was like, long dark hair, brown skin, either delicious tan or just delicious brown, whatever. But, she would be like fit and tall and all this kind of stuff. But then, those are just physical characteristics. Like she would have to have a personality too. But the first thing that I came up with was those physical characteristics. And then I didn't even have a name for her. That was like I did a little doodle of her in 2010 so that I could commission other artists. And so I just started gathering I would just start gathering like art and commissions for her. And then I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do anything with her, she's going to need a name, and it can't be Jane Doe. Because originally it was going to be like she had no name at all. It was like she was just sort of seen by her body and her face, and just she would be identified with that. And I was like, can I actually do that? And it's like, no, I can't. I can't refer to her just as the woman or Jane Doe, because it's really not going to work. So I sort of I looked up like Persian female names, and I saw Laylee, which means nocturnal. And it's like, wow, that's a cool name actually, because first of all, always been kind of a night owl, but also in the original story that I came up with her for, she was also supposed to be a werewolf, and it was like that would be so fitting. And so all this stuff, and Laylee is even kind of a nice girl's name, like a good female name in a way. It's almost like Lily, as Sketch Therapy once even said, which is a great reminder of what a good name Laylee is. It's also funny though, is that a lot of people sort of they see Laylee and they think Lily, or they don't really know how to pronounce the name or something. But it's very simple. But it's also distinct, and that was another thing I really liked about the name and how it fits with her look and her character so well. I really like that a lot. And so one of the things is that kind of made her the mascot for the blog for Shitty Webcomics back in the day, along with Jerk Douglas, did a webcomic for Shitty Webcomics called Princess High Ground, where the main character was Princess High Ground. She was sort of a parody of Kate Leth, and this was like 2012 and 2013. So it was sort of like a dueling female mascots, but Laylee was my thing, and I had been writing story. I written a story for her that was based on that first original idea I came up with a bunch of years ago, like 2002. And I finally came up with a good idea and a good way to structure that story. And none of this story is Villains of the Snow Sea. It's actually a very different story entirely. And recently, like the beginning of this year, or actually it was the end of last year, I was like, after I did the crowdfunding for Literally, people were telling me, hey, you should do a comic about Laylee. And I knew an artist who was like, I would love to do a comic about Laylee if you have another story. And so that's when I wrote Inevitably Doomed, which was just a one shot, and that starred Laylee. And the suit is pretty much as iconic, a representation of her at this point. So every story with Laylee is going to have her in the suit. But that was a different story. And then later I came up with, what if I wrote, that original story of Laylee and the guy who was Thomas. What if I wrote that today in just a new setting? Like what would the daydream fantasy be about what these two would do and what kind of situations and adventures they would get into? And then all of a sudden I started brainstorming just ridiculous amounts of shit of Thomas and Laylee, like in this big, almost kind of steampunk city where they would be getting into all kinds of bizarre trouble, and they'd be, run around and be living on the edge of town, and they would be, on the run from Johnny Law, as it were. But it's sort of like the not even the real police, but it would be like unofficial people designating themselves as the police, and the populace of the city just kind of goes along with it as like, well, these people say they're the police, so we can't do anything about them. And Thomas and Laylee are kind of on the other end where they're against these sort of police things. And it's kind of, plays out as sort of the daydream fantasy, but also like the kind of modern statement about basically the unofficial police are supposed to represent social justice, where it's like they tell people how you're supposed to behave, but they don't have any official legal say. But people just go along with it. And then I was coming up with then, because of all the events that we've been seeing and been happening, is the counterpoint of that would grow from that. So there's the paladins, which are the sort of social justice police in the big city, and then there would be the counter paladins or something. They don't have a name yet necessarily, but and that's way down the line in this story. But it's still going to be actually part of this story, Villains of the Snow Sea, where it's the paladins, the counter paladins, and then there's just Thomas and Laylee, who both sides despise, because Thomas and Laylee, basically, Laylee's, as the story starts off, Laylee is attacking the paladins. And in a way, yeah, she, as you can see on the page here, she's designating herself as the villain. She's against the paladins, who are supposed to be the good guys, even though they're really not. And, as the story plays out way, way down the line, these are all like just, again, like daydream ideas that I just started throwing together. And I was like, oh, this would be cool if this happened and this happened. So it's a lot of long-term, large-scale stuff that I have planned down the line. But I also wanted to make sure that the story could just introduce itself very simply.
How many issues have you planned out? I know you're already starting work on the second one.
Well, the second one's like almost halfway through at this point. But and I've written the third one, but there's still a lot of tweaks I want to do to the chapter 3. And then once chapter 3 gets finished, actually, me and the artist, I wanted to have the artist do another story that I had actually written back in like 2010 or 2011. So this might sort of be put on a hiatus, but it also depends on if I can find other artists, because I have tons of finished scripts. Like the other story I want to do, it's called Antipode, and it's that one's like 9 issues, and I wrote that. I completely finished writing that like 2012 easily, or maybe 2013 at the latest, and so that's completely finished. That's ready to go. And then I have a bunch of other stories that are finished and ready to go too. But Villains of the Snow Sea is something that's in the works, and I have no idea how many issues it would be. But I do know that basically I have 3 chapters that I've scripted, and then a 4th chapter where I pretty much know exactly where it's going to go. And then, it's like after that, maybe the 5th, 6th, and the 7th chapter, I generally know what's going to happen in those as well. And then after that, it could be, it could be like 100 chapters. It could be 50 total. I'm not entirely sure at this point.
What's it like, and what do you have to go through the process that you had to go through to get it up onto Amazon? And
Oh, that was a mess.
Because you totally bypassed the whole crowdfunding mess.
Yeah, I
when
was
it
really
came
kind of
to
lucky.
this book.
I was really lucky in that because, and it's something that most people really should not expect or count on, is that I found an artist who is generally attracted to not just our comics, but what we had to say in general about comics from all sorts of avenues. And so he was he found a real affinity of what we were talking about. So, and I found out he was an artist and clearly a fucking really good one who had a lot of experience himself making webcomics. And I was like, and I could tell really because he clearly, he knows what he's doing, but he was also just, making them for fun. And that's something I have experience doing is making comics for fun, not even taking it too seriously, just doing it to see, what comes out and how it looks. And that's the thing is that, so because of that sort of getting together with him about that, we didn't have to do any crowdfunding campaign to make the comic. We just were making it. And that's something that people should not expect and should not hope for. Because I remember the first time, that first webcomic a long time ago that I did a bunch of years ago, I was hoping that an artist would just kind of work with me and that my ideas would be so good that they wouldn't be able to say no. But the thing is that there's really no such thing as an idea that's so good that an artist can not, that they can't refuse to work with you or to make the comic. But because most comic artists, they'll have their own ideas and they'll always be more passionate about their own ideas usually. But at the same time, at this point, Laylee had taken on a lot of fan appeal, and people had been seeing a lot of artists do either fan art or commissions. Like it's bizarre. I've actually gotten some really cool artists to do just fan art for Laylee, and I never expected that. And these, people, artists that I didn't know really, and stuff I can't show on stream. So it's like I can't link you to it. But the thing is that it's really cool stuff, and people were like, "Oh yeah, I recognize this character. I've seen this character before." And it was bizarre to get that from commissioners. And it was like or from artists that I would commission. Like even Japanese artists, I commissioned Pio Taiku once, or Pio Taiko, and he told me like, "Oh, I recognize this character. I've seen it before." And it's like, "Wow, how the hell do you know this character?" Because I didn't think they were that popular. But when
I saw a lot of Laylee before I ever even knew her name or where she came from.
Yeah, that's the thing. Her suit is kind of her name. It's like it's an easier way to identify her suit and her general look and that kind of stuff. It's even funny is that the sort of that strand of hair going down between her eyes is even an identifier that other artists told me that they recognized her by. And it's like, really? And it's like, yeah, she's got that hair fang, right? It's like hair fang.
Dean, you just have to interrupt him.
Yeah. No. Well,
we're working on that. Yeah.
There was a couple of things I wanted to.
I've had a couple beers, so I'm kind of rambling tonight.
No, you're good. Well, I've seen some of the commissions on Twitter, and whoa, that's some spicy stuff, Thomas.
Well, even in this comic, I think it's pretty spicy, and that's one of the things I really love about Arxelay's art is that like any one of these panels, I consider just as good as any commission I've ever paid to get of her.
No, they're good. They're really good. And like I'm no comic aficionado. In fact, a wise man once told me comics are gay.
Well,
I think that wise man was
right.
you, man. I think that. Oh shit, it was you.
No wonder he was right then, because it was me.
But so, is there anything that like you draw inspiration from, or like when you're writing? Is there like? I guess.
Well, yeah. There's all sorts of stuff. It's I mean, it's weird because, like, if I try to think of the inspirations for writing, I could think of a bunch of like TV shows and comics and stuff. I think one of the first things that I can really think of is I used to be like when Jurassic Park came out. I think my aunt, who is just a cigarette hag, she was a real cigarette hag. She was awful. I kind of hated her. Because she's just terrible. But she did give me a hardcover that she had finished reading. I guess it didn't even have the case for it anymore of Jurassic Park, and it was just before the movie was coming out. It was the first novel I ever read, and I loved it. And I just went out and I just started getting every Michael Crichton novel I could. And me and my brother would read all of them. And so that's like an early inspiration and influence too. And then there's, all sorts of comics and cartoons and stuff. But Berserk ended up being a huge one too in the or there was like the early 2000s. I read Berserk because somebody just recommended to me, and I almost blew it off because anytime anyone recommended anime to me, it was always shit. But Berserk, they were like, "Oh, check out Berserk," and it was just a link to a website that had Berserk on it, just mangapiracy.net or whatever the hell. And I was like, whatever, I'll read it. And I start reading it, and it's like, oh, it's kind of cool actually. And it would just keep getting better and better, and I got really sucked in. And there's a reason a lot of people really talk about it and really dwell on it, because it will get you really invested in a lot of characters, and then it will do all sorts of bizarre, freakish stuff to it, and really show you what consequences to the characters can mean, to show that that there are consequences for every character, no matter what. And I was like, wow, this is nothing like American comics, just because. Like you can have a lot of main characters that you might like, or even side characters that you might like, who are just thrown in the garbage, ripped apart like fresh bread by just some demon, into a chapter suddenly. And it's like, holy shit. And that was a huge influence. And that's a huge influence on a lot of people who are getting into comics these days. People who are really into comics, not sort of the fake comics fans who are just say they're into comics, but all they like is, just boring American shit. Those aren't really those are people who aren't really into comics.
I really like Superman. No, I'm
Superman. You know what though? I actually did like All-Star Superman though. The one Grant Morrison wrote. I liked that a lot, and also I knew a friend who would send me like CBRs and stuff through like Rapid Share or Mega Upload back in the day. And again, this was like mid 2000s, and he sent me like the first 60 issues of Punisher Max, and I was shocked at how much I liked it, and the art isn't even that good for them, especially the first 6 issues, but it doesn't need to be. And that's, it kind of fed into my appeal of comics, is that the art doesn't have to be good. It just has to be there and display the story. It just has to tell you what's happening. The art can be total dog shit, but if you understand what's happening, that's all you really need. And that's what I really love about comics, more than even some people who say that they love comics. I really like this panel too, because it's fucking Laylee. Again, this is a lot of Riona that you don't see in much comics. Is the female protagonist who's like, oh, she's the toughest, she's badass. But Laylee really, she ultimately loses this. Not to spoil the whole first chapter, but she gets in this giant fight where she gets her ass kicked, and she kind of wins at the end, but ultimately loses. And that's the introduction. That's how I wanted to introduce the story, is that there are some serious stakes for her, that she isn't going to just kick everyone's ass and be like, yeah, I'm that badass. She's in a huge fight, and she gets into a bigger fight than she would expect, and that you even see in most comics in general. It's, in a way the more graphic fighting, but also like there's more detail to it. And there's another thing I really like about Archela's art is like one of the later one of the end pages almost, where she fucking like rips one of the ice golems in half with her fucking superpower hands. And it's like, oh, that looks great.
Yeah, one of the things I liked about it was that she got her ass whooped. Like,
yeah, because it shows that she isn't just the invincible super, like nothing's gonna bother her. And that she doesn't just like get her ass kicked and then she's like, that was tough, but I won. She basically is kind of left for dead at the end of the chapter. And then it plays into the, how it will lead into the next chapter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it had a much more realistic kind of bent to it.
So I was hoping to take just a quick break from talking about your comic, and I wanted to ask you, you're friends with Tim and Mark, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, and it's been said before that you and your brother, I believe, your brother also, you guys wrote for one of Tim and Mark's like side books, right?
It was Wall Might 3. We did the backup story that ends the book, and not only ends Wall Might 3, but then of course, because Wall Might 3 is the last Wall Might book, it ends the Wall Might omnibus even. So our story is at the end of Wall Might Gold Standard and at the end of just Wall Might 3. And yeah, that was I can go into more of that, of how that happened if you want.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering.
Well, basically, Tim and Mark, especially Tim, was he found our channel very appealing ever since, like, he found it himself behind the scenes an enemy of Comicsgate. A lot of the ordinary proles, the suckers, the rubes in Comicsgate are completely unaware of this. But Tim and Mark were considered enemies of Comicsgate by the leaders, the inner circle, the inner layer of the hug box, the core of the hug box, if you will. They despised Tim and Mark, and they considered them not Comicsgate. In fact, I even asked Ethan Van Sciver personally live on stream if Tim was part of Comicsgate, and he said no, because his comics were political. And I was like, well, that's, it's maybe it's not up to him, but it's also ultimately up to Tim and Mark. The thing is that there's a lot of other open hypocrisies of Comicsgate that people weren't really talking about, and it wasn't being made public. So when me and my brother did videos where we would just talk openly about it, Tim, sort of got attracted to that, and so he started contacting me and being like, "Oh, how about I like this video," and that kind of stuff, and sort of the same way that Doug T-Naples did. But it was last year. Tim was telling me that him and Mark were planning to wrap up the whole Wall Might series, that they weren't going to do anymore, and that they were going to do a comic basically about abortion, and it was going to be like pro-life kind of thing. And it's like, so we're sort of taking any reputation we may have had with this thing, and we're just going to throw it away, or, well, not really that way, but just that they were going to do something where it's like, we're going to do whatever we want now, and whoever doesn't like it, it's going to be our last comic as the Wall Might thing anyway, so it doesn't matter. And and then they also, because they were just going to go all out with that, they also asked me, if me and my brother would do the backup story. It's like the last 8 pages of the book, and we're like, absolutely, of course. Yeah, I mean, they didn't even have to ask. They're like, hey, we would like you to do it. And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely, right now. Immediately started coming up with ideas before he even told us what the comic should be about. I think we mentioned this in a recent stream that we did on D-Live or BitChute or something like that. But it was like after a day or two, he was like, okay, we want you to do it about Epstein. And so all the ideas me and my brother had brainstormed already, we had to throw away. And it's like, but we were completely in favor of that. And I had the experience writing and scripting. So basically it was, I threw together the script, but, as you'll notice in that lower corner there next to Goblin Slayer, it says written by Randisha Diaz and Raymond Porce. And that's me and my brother. So, So yeah, we did this story. Because it was almost like trying to top themselves with the whole pro-life comic. Is like, let's also do one about Jeffrey Epstein. And so I came up with these ideas, and pretty much the entire script, everything I wrote down in the script, they used. They made a few changes, including like references to the previous chapters of Wall Knight and stuff. But aside from that, everything I wrote is exactly as it is. And it's funny because I was so used to, after all this time, I was so used to either having to like beg, borrow, and steal from artists to get them to do art for a comic I have written, or I would just have to pay them.
Yeah.
But this was the first time somebody paid me to draw a comic that I had written. So it was really a fantastic, incredible experience. And also we managed to sneak it under the radar very nicely as well, because all of us knew, me and my brother, but especially Tim and Mark, were like, let's the information will be out there. People can look at the credits in there, but let's not blab it out in the open until the comic is on store shelves. So we waited and kept it nice and quiet for a while. But
I noticed it during the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing, is that I forgot that got mentioned in the campaign. He mentioned that, and it's like, oh, our names are right on there. And it's like, yeah, but people are going to have to actually read closely, and that's if they even care. Which I think most people just bought the book just to buy it and read it, based on how Tim and Mark had delivered so well on all of their previous campaigns and comics. And I think Common America had come out just before this too, and that was really blowing up because that was like one of the best comics of the entire year easily. And I would really like to have some involvement with that in the future, but it depends. So I can't. I'm not going to say we're going to do something to do with. We're going to have something to do with Common America, perhaps. But Tim and Mark have huge.
It was you if I hadn't have read literally.
Yeah, because Randisha Diaz is like a pen name on top of a pen name on top of a pen name. So it's, which as you probably have realized and noticed, is has become very necessary these days when people are blackmailing other comic creators to try and get our names and addresses.
See, I figured it out because I think it was like on your Patreon.
Mm.
The Randisha Diaz has like your email, and then
Yeah,
when like the whole Liam thing happened, which is a great saga, you gave me your email, and then I was like, oh, and that's also attributed to this and this, and I was like, oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
and that's how I found out.
it's weird how like usually those pieces don't even get put together necessarily. But oh yeah, here's the Comixology edition of Literally, which only $1. And technically it's $1 if you get on Comixology, but if you look it up on eHentai, it's free. Which I actually uploaded myself. I registered a new account there with the SWC Mod 1 email address, in fact, because I was actually looking at who's the giant Smurf guy or whatever who does that Rami comic, and he was talking about today about how his comic was put onto eHentai and that he was okay with that. And I was like, yeah, actually, a lot of people's comics, like web comics and stuff, like Clumsor is an artist who I've known for a long time, and his comic, The Party, which he gets commissioned to do by Pant Boy. Pretty much every page of that gets thrown onto eHentai.
Only the best comics get thrown onto eHentai. You really haven't made it until you're on eHentai.
and it's funny because there's all sorts of just art books and not even porn stuff, just in general, art books, comics, and all that kind of stuff is just thrown onto eHentai sometimes by people who are just interested. And I thought, maybe I could do that and throw an extra page onto the end that just chills where you could buy the comic if you want. And nobody has to, but it's like it'd be funny to do that, at least as like a sort of a way to preview it. And in a way, it's a nice way to sort of have an archive of it, because like there are books that you can't even find anywhere. You can't buy them. You can't buy them in stores. You can't buy them on Amazon, but you can find them on eHentai that aren't in any way hentai or porn or anything. They're just like, whatever JoJo art books or Eva art books or that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of, and I've been very familiar with the site for a long time too.
Shock. I'm
Yeah.
surprised. So
Yeah.
where did you come up with Helen?
Well, this was definitely this came out of the Shitty Webcomics blog for sure. Was I wanted to make a comic, just a short comic book series, like 2 or 3 chapters that would be sort of a parody of everything that the SJWs, the dreaded SJWs, always said they wanted. This, like, we need more women of color and healthy at every size and that kind of stuff, representation in art and stuff. And so I came up with this idea of Helen, who would just be an awful fat nerd, annoying loser dork. And then in chapter 1, she would be just every bit a nerd. And then in chapter 2, it would just like kick any reader in the balls by up aging her like a good 5 or 6 years. And then all of a sudden she becomes hot, just as an insult to the reader, but also as a joke. But at the same time, for entertainment, just for fun, for goofing around. And that was the idea I came up with, like, 2013, 2014. And so when I wrote the script just for myself for fun, back in 2014, I wrote all 3 chapters, all 3 issues. And it took a long time for it to finally get made. And Jerk Douglas, the guy who did the art for Princess High Ground, I worked with him. I was able to give him money. And we did do an Indiegogo that I was able to give him the money for, to get the comic made. And so we got that out there. And yeah, the first chapter, it works so nicely on its own without even a sequel. It's almost like Avengers Infinity War, the movie, which is the only thing that counts. But but it's great to see. In a way, I really loved how for a while there was an Avengers movie where at the end half of them are vaporized into ash, and the bad guy just goes away and wins and is happy. And it's like there's nothing after that. It's like there's no sequel, there's no happy ending. Just for a year, there was just that. And I really loved that aspect of that. And I guess literally we're in kind of it's just the first chapter still, so we're in that phase where there is no follow-up yet. But issue 2 it's slow going because the main artist, he's had a lot of life problems. The shutdown didn't help, but then he's had problems in his family with some bad stuff, and that sucks. But he's gotten a few pages done, and we do basically have funding from people who are just fans of either the blog. Like, there's one guy who is just a fan of Shitty Webcomics from the old blog days, and he's like, here, I'll pay for the pages. And so he's paid for a bunch of the pages, but the thing is, I also don't ask him for pages up front. So it's like if the comic sort of slowed down like this, I haven't been asking him yet, and I probably could and get more pages paid for, but for now it's still slowed down. And the problem really isn't even finding money, which I could probably do a crowdfunding campaign, but I don't want to, because with a crowdfunding campaign, it's like you got to be beholden to delivering your comic through the campaign, and it's like it's just so much better to just have the comic made and somebody can just go up and buy it, and I prefer that so much more.
Because I gotta say, I know Helen was supposed to be some sort of like joke character, but even at the same time when she's all these SJW stereotypes all rolled into one. She's still very sweet and lovable, and the book is just funny.
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't want to do, was make something that would blatantly be everything that the SJWs asked for. It would be a takeoff on that. But at the same time, you can't just, like a lot of people who think they can write comics and make comics, think they can just take, a shallow one sentence high concept pitch like that and milk that for an entire issue of a book. You can't do that at all. You have to have some appeal. It's like Kurt Vonnegut said, is that you got to have a character, at least one character that the audience can root for, and you got to have at least one character that wants something, even if it's just a glass of water. And that's the thing with Helen, is that she's not just, the joke character. She's an actual character. She has to be fleshed out to some degree. And then, and the thing is that the whole, the goof of the next issue where she grows up and becomes sort of a different person is the joke, but at the same time, the growth of her as a person represents how people go from like being one kind of person during puberty to a completely different kind of person years after puberty. And that's basically what the comic itself is about, because then, not to spoil the entire thing, but the third issue is the last one, and it does another time jump where she's several years older and has another completely different perspective on life than she did in the previous two chapters as well.
Well, isn't that what happens to all of us, though?
And that's
we
really
go
the
through
point of it.
puberty, and we're awkward, and there are things that we want that we can't have because they're out of our reach, just because we're still young.
Yeah, they're just fantasy, like, like the delusion of youth, which, a lot of people are like, oh, youth is the best time. But in a way, in this era, that's like one of the things I'm really happy about this first issue, is that it shows how miserable puberty, the actual puberty years are. They're just terrible. And I think that's something that a lot of real readers, not comic book fans, but readers, just readers, not even comic book readers, but readers, can easily relate to and at least understand. And that's one of the things I'm really happiest about with Literally. And then with Villains of the Snow Sea, it's a completely different tone. It's such a different story. So, like, I have this one comic Literally for like fun, kind of goofy adventure, but relatability and stuff. And then Villains of the Snow Sea for like a more serious drama with maybe more not bleak necessarily, but like there's some danger and adventure and stuff in that, with a different tone. And that was, in a way, it's like you want to be able to stretch and really see what your range is as a writer. So I wanted to write a funny story, because that's something I was used to, because a lot of other webcomics I had made were for just goofs and fun. And just like when me and my brother would write, with ballpoint pen and lined notebooks, those were for fun. I wanted
they're both
to see if I could do something
they're both
serious.
Like almost like female in peril adventure stories, without being without emphasizing the whole woman in peril.
Yeah, without like fetishizing it or being like, oh, she's in like a leopard bikini in the jungle or something. It's like, how played out is that, unless you're going to be even if you're going to be self-aware of it, the self-aware version of that's kind of played out too now. So it's like, there's so many new takes that people could do that they just kind of don't. Like, nobody tries anything new, original in comics anymore. And so that was another thing I really want. That was one of my goals, was to really do something that nobody's done or seen before, as much as I could anyways. I mean, because they always say there's nothing new under the sun, but I kind of don't believe that either. And so that's why also I think that a lot of people have been really finding Literally #1 to be so appealing. That's also why Tim and Mark asked me and my brother to write a comic, was not just because they liked our YouTube videos, stupid, meaningless bullshit like that, but because we had actually written a comic, finished it, gotten it out there where people can see it. And I know Tim really not only liked it, but he read it several times because he just enjoyed, just because I imagine it's such a fucking wasteland in the comics medium these days. To find anything that's just fun is such a rarity, because so many times it's like, but this one's about how I got betrayed all the time. It's
Yeah.
bleak and hopeless, and it's just like, yeah, just get over yourself.
There's lots of bleak hopelessness.
Yeah, or like
especially,
edgy, try hard crap.
yeah, you find a lot of that in indie comics.
There's too many. Like I'm not going to say that's necessarily bad, anything anyone does, but like too many monster comics. It used to be too many superhero comics. Now it's too many monster comics. And I know there's some monster comics out there by people who are decent, but it's like I want to just see something that I really haven't seen before. And so it tends to lead to me just making the comic that I want to see.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious about a character that I believe you came up with during your web comic years, and you have expressed that you want to do future stories with that character. Could you tell me about the character? Is it okay if I bring up the character, like talk about it?
I'm not sure. What is it? An original character that's based off a real life person?
I don't know. It starts with an M.
I don't know. Oh, do you mean Miranda?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's the main. She's one of the two main characters for Antipode, and that was the comic that I wanted to do with Arxelay after we do like chapter 3 of Villains of the Snow Sea. Yeah, Miranda and Megan are basically they're the Antipode or Antipodes, or I know that Antipode is another pronunciation, but I think that's for a land mass somewhere in the world. But basically, the word means opposite, and the way Miranda worked is that she was like sort of like a not a sexy paladin, but she's like female paladin warrior who's very stern and serious, and then her opposite then is Megan, who's like the sexy witch chick, but she's not like the witch hat wearing witch. She's like a female mage who is, doesn't have a moral code to speak of. So in a way that makes her the opposite of Miranda, who's, the strict moralist and that kind of stuff. And basically it's the basis for the story was my friend who I've known for like 20 years, Crate, who I think is supposed to be watching this, but and he's in our Discord server too. But Crate one day was just joking, telling me about how he wanted to make he was joking about a lot of stuff. Like, I'm going to go into class one day wearing a shirt that just says faggot fuck, based off of all of our favorite characters from Falling Down, the surplus store owner played by Frederick Forrest, who was also chef in Apocalypse Now, but he was the neo-Nazi in Falling Down, who is like, these are Vietnam jungle boots, and all that kind of goofy shit. And he was just like horrifically racist, and he hated gay people and all this stuff, and we just loved that character. But Crate was telling me how about he had come up with an idea for a sequel to Falling Down, where it's two guys on the opposite ends of Los Angeles, and they just carve a path of destruction into the center of the town. But it would have these stupid fucking anime elements where like buildings are getting blown over and the cops can only watch impotently as they go, incredible, and just this he would just come up with stupid ideas like this for movies that it's never gonna make, and just that kind of thing. And then years later, I was
perfect for a comic book.
Yeah, exactly. So years later, I was like, what if you did that, but with like sort of that stupid anime element of like the 90s Saturday morning on Sci-Fi Channel anime stuff like Demon City Shinjuku or whatever the fuck, where it's like two chicks, two female warrior types. One would be the powerful, like muscular paladin chick, and the other would be the Thikika witch girl with magic powers and stuff, and they're at the opposite ends of like a ruined not ancient ruined city, but like a city that was once big thriving city and now is just overrun with like monsters and shit.
Like
And they
Detroit?
yeah, like Detroit basically. And they carve a path of destruction towards the center where the center has their goal. And so that was my first general idea for it. And started outlining it and brainstorming it and just brainstorming and brainstorming and all these ideas were coming to me. And this was like 2010. And I wrote this and I actually submitted it to Dark Horse because Dark Horse was the only place that took open submissions. But they were taking open submissions for Dark Horse Presents, where like the maximum story length was 8 pages, and they really wanted you to just draw it. And so I sent them like a 22-page first chapter, and then I was writing like other comic ideas. I was like, oh, what about this? And I would send them full comics, and they'd probably throw them right in the garbage because they were more than 8 pages. But I thought it was still some good experience for me, and so I still I stuck with that, and I got some commissions eventually of Miranda and Megan, including from LM Sketch, who's a really cool porn artist who's on Twitter. Check him out on Twitter. You'll see some really fucking degrading shit.
And you can't miss it if you follow Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. Because I retweet. I try not to retweet too much porn. I could, like, when LM Sketch posts, he does these giant post dumps where it's like 8 tweets in a row with like 4 pictures each of just everything he's drawn in the past month or two. And I could retweet all of them, but it's like, I'll just do one. I'll retweet one of them, and if anyone wants to
I thank you for your restraint.
Yeah,
honestly,
you should be thanking me for not retweeting Boo-Roo, because Boo-Roo was actually a big fan of Shitty Webcomics and sent us some of our I think our first ever fan art of Princess High Ground that was shockingly good, but also like horrifically pornographic. So we loved it, of course, but so I've always been a follower of Boo-Roo, and Boo-Roo's been a fan of Laylee since those old days too. So in fact, he did porn of Laylee, I think last year, that still occasionally will get a like and a retweet from somebody. It's like, oh, that's nice. So Boo-Roo's always cool with me.
So,
but so I got all sorts of commissions and fan art, but for the Antipode comic, that's the general thrust of that is and again, it's not just about their archetypes, because it's like, oh, there's sexy witch and then the strong buff, sort of buffed out paladin chick, but throughout that story, it's like 9 chapters, and throughout of it, they have like a weird twist to both of them, where
don't go into the twist and ruin it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I was about to, because I was thinking, because I've actually done that before on old.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you on that one.
All right, yeah, because that will be worth seeing, I think, because that was a comic I've been looking forward to making, and I've been trying to make that for a long time, for many years now, and I haven't really had the opportunity. And I think Arxley, his art would fit the style of that kind of comic really perfectly. So I hope he's looking forward to that, because I would really like to work with him on that, and maybe next year we'll be able to start that one. But if I can find another artist who would do it, then Arxley could just keep working on Villains of the Snow Sea, and I can get another artist. I think there's one on. It's called Genius Fetus, but that's not his Twitter name. But I was almost going to work with him on Antipode, and then I think he got hired at a video game company to do concept art. He's been working there for a bunch of years too. So it's like, it was a close call. I almost was going to make that kind. It was really disappointing, but if I can find another artist that would fit the style of that comic, I'm definitely still willing to be able to pay, or at least try to pay somebody. I just know that I don't really want to work with anyone who was part of Comicsgate.
We are bouncing up against an hour, which is usually about how long we go. Mm-hmm. And I think we've covered a lot, but everybody, links to the Amazon for both books and physical
Yeah,
copies
the
are in the
Amazon's the
description.
Amazon's the physical copy, and then there's the digital copy. The digital copy is cheaper, and it's probably always going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
I'm trying to set up like a MailChimp thing so that people can keep up with news for our comics. But so far, the best way is to just be donating to our Patreon. If you just give us $1 every time we come out with a new comic, you'll be able to see the
link for the Patreon is also in the description, as well as the links to the Comixology, your DLive, and your BitChute. All of this
DLive
stuff,
and BitChute is just kind of a goof. That's just where we do videos, which again aren't really the important thing to us. Those
everything that Liam got taken down is now over on BitChute.
Yeah, it's pretty much all on the BitChute. So.
Where it's immortalized until BitChute eventually fails.
Yeah.
But it's immortalized there.
Some of it's on Libri, and again, we have a completely open mirror policy. If anyone wants to take our videos and mirror them on YouTube, you don't even have to ask.
Take bits and bytes and chunks of them and make your own little compilation videos and make fun of Liam some more.
Make Liam cry again.
Make Liam cry again. And speaking of making Liam cry, we're going to talk to Testify real quick because he can make Liam cry. He has something that he wanted to tell us about the Nasser stream with Ethan. Was his...
Oh yeah, that stream that I ignored.
Yeah, which was, which was his little nudge. So we'll see.
I got nothing against Nasser and like him trying to, either make amends or do whatever to try and get paid. I absolutely understand. So I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't like Nasser anymore. It's not about that. I understand that.
Yeah, it's not about that at all. But he says he got something good and juicy, which was his pitch. So we'll see. Unless he's just coming on to tell you to shut up, because he does that too.
Oh no.
Yes, Testify, darling.
Oh no.
Oh.
Thomas, do you talk to your shadow?
Yeah.
I just was wondering. Okay, just you should. But yeah, I've got some breaking news. I am still the Antichrist of Comicsgate in Ethan's mind. He won't even mention my name out loud.
Is that it?
No.
Okay. Because if that's all it was,
within the hour, there will be another Orange Dragon drop.
All right.
Oh, nice.
And here is a semi-spoiler. We will have the police report next week.
Nice.
Yay.
Oh.
Liam didn't happen to show up in Nasser's chat, did he? Because that would have just been
no. Of course he wouldn't.
I was there, so he's probably going to hear about it. So you never know. But yeah, Thomas, you need to look at your wall. Just look at your shadow, talk to it, and less streaming. Bye.
There we go.
Talking to Vicky. I mean,
no,
I can't help if Vicky and DA want to know things, and I tell them.
I do want to know.
I had fun.
And I'm learning to interrupt when I need to and stop you. I'm getting better and better at that.
That is good. One
Dean
thing
still sucks at it, but that's just the way he is.
Well, no, so like the one thing was like there were a couple questions that I had, and then like within like the first like 5 to 10 minutes, you would answer. Yeah, you would answer them, and I was like, "Damn it, no, my question."
That you were going to ask. I mean, I guess that's kind of a good thing in a way.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, that's one thing about writers is that they certainly love to talk about their own work. So I'm definitely not going to be an exception to that.
Yeah, no, I feel like everybody that we've had on to interview talks pretty long about their comic, and that's what the interviews are here for. So
I had a few drinks too. That always makes me more talkative.
I'd much rather hear you than have to talk.
Yeah,
no offense
I'd
to
much
the chat who probably would rather hear me, but
this isn't about. I've been ignoring the chat the entire time.
But this isn't supposed to be about me or Dean. It's supposed to be about
No, exactly.
We are gathered here today in praise of me.
In praise of you. It's about your work.
I like being able to sort of get the word out about at least the ideas I have for comics, because I have a bunch of them that have been sitting around. I haven't even gotten to half of them in today's show. There's all sorts of completely finished scripts and ideas for other stuff that I could talk about at any time. But the main ones, it was good to talk about literally and Villains of the Snow Sea. But it was also nice to sort of revisit Antipode because I'm really looking forward to at least trying to get that one made.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, that one
Like,
should be really good. If you like Villains of the Snow Sea, I think you'll like that one more because that one's a little more sort of trashy in hopefully a fun way.
I like trashy. Who doesn't like trashy?
Yeah, in a way, almost like soap opera, gritty, grimy. That one's Antipode is much more influenced by Berserk. But whenever someone says, "Oh, it's influenced by Berserk," it's just Berserk, but really lame and boring. But this one's influenced by sort of the idea of those kind of sleazy animes where it's like the hot chick with big tits goes on adventure with cool, confident guy or something like that through, Demon City or whatever. And it's like, I wanted to sort of do my own take on that where it's like, I could do better than any of those motherfuckers. And so, that's kind of my basis for Antipode. But again, Villains of the Snow Sea, its own take, and then literally its own take. Very, very different tonally, and I'm really happy about how those are playing out nicely so far.
Yeah,
and I'm always looking for more artists.
I enjoyed the juxtaposition between Villains of the Snow Sea and literally, and how completely different they were, even though they're both, female.
Because I think a lot of creators can get caught trying to recreate the same tone in every story they do. They want to just try and make the same story or something, but ultimately they don't have any tone, or they don't really have any story a lot of the time in comics, anyways.
Well, you find something that worked, and
yeah, it depends.
It's just natural to try to recreate it constantly, which I don't really think works very well. It doesn't work in movies. It doesn't work in TV. It doesn't work in books. So why would you expect it to work in comics?
Yeah.
I mean, even bands get boring after.
Yeah. I think it's a really new era in comics where new creators are. It's tricky though, because new creators are also sort of getting stomped down by people, not just other creators, but fans who demand that you can only make comics a certain way. And then like even the way people talk about like SJW comics, like, oh, they're making comics the wrong way. And it's like, so what? Just let them. I don't give a shit. So that's how I feel about that.
I just have to say, Smug, that is the most disturbing thing.
Is it different?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, that was weird, Pug. That was.
I can't tell you how.
I do gotta say, I have a weird boner though on top of it, so. I feel disgusted with myself. I feel disgusted with myself, but it's there, and it's not going away.
Jim Turner mentions everyone is jealous of Ethan. He's comics Jesus after all. Yeah, why are all these haters just jealous of the success that they're having with the drawing straw guns and other gay shit like that? Like somebody came to me today. Again, it happens so often. Maybe this is a good point to leave off on. Somebody came to me today about how they added up all the campaigns that had just screwed their backers and are either late or canceled. And it was like 9,800. It's like, shit, that's almost 10,000 people, who supported Comicsgate Comics who got nothing.
It was like 11,000 something.
Yeah, he eventually
total.
He remembered,
including Brutus.
Yeah, he remembered Brutus, Sovereign, and Xenotype. So that got it added onto the 9,800 to make like 11,000. And it's like, that's pretty much the legacy. That's what we're jealous of, is being able to rob and cheat backers. And that's what they're proud of. That's what Ethan's proud of, is all these people that, trusted the movement with money who just got fucking ripped off. Meanwhile, we barely ask for any money for our comics. we're just looking to make the comics, and we're not, we're just delivering the comics. It's like, there you go. Here's the comic book. It's on sale. Go check it out.
Yeah.
Furious TV has a good point. I didn't read it yet, but I know it's a good point.
Yeah. King Wolf Comics is synarchic. Out of casualty of this fake duality imposed by a fat gaylord who's propagandized oppositions to nothing of value and importance.
Yeah.
I would definitely.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always thought about opposing the SJWs, is that like you can't make an idea based off of what you're against. It has to be what you're for. That was what we said back in 2015, is that if there's going to be a movement or a statement of principles or ideas, it has to be what you're for first. And if it's about what you're against, that has to only be secondary. But as we've seen it with Comicsgate, it's about promising shit that you don't deliver, and then complaining about what you're against to drum up drama for clicks, which works. That's the success they have, is that they manufacture drama and it's outrage marketing. But the thing is, when it comes to the actual product, it's shit. So that's the difference that, of course, we have, is that we're actually putting out good comics for a change. We're not selling our comics based on the outrage of like, oh, the SJWs are doing this, or even that, Comicsgate's doing this. Our comics speak for themselves, and the people who read them actually enjoy them, including a lot of other creators, successful and popular creators, including Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini, who very much enjoyed our comics.
Yeah, they're the nicest guys.
Yeah, if you want to
they
see
really
if you want to catch on to what they like, to what they're seeing in the comics, go ahead and buy ours. The links are somewhere.
They're all in the description.
Yeah,
all of them.
That is good.
I plopped everything down in there.
Even my channel. It's,
yeah, there's even a link to Dean's channel.
Well, but go subscribe.
Go subscribe.
The thing I recommend the highest is check out our comics. You don't even need to donate to our Patreon or check out our videos. Just check out our comics, but also check out DA's channel. His stuff is good. I'm subscribed to DA and Vicky, of course.
Yeah, and if you and you can always just follow Thomas on Twitter, and he'll tell you when they're coming out with a new book.
Yeah, for as long as I'm on Twitter, anyways. I'll try and get that MailChimp thing set up, but it's like, oh, you got to make a template for what your emails are going to look like. So you got to pick a header image and that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I'll do that later. And
now you have to have them. Now they like approve of what you include in your email. I saw something along those lines.
I mean, that's fine, because all I plan to ever post about on the MailChimp stuff would just be about the comic itself. Any comics that we have, it'll just be King Wolf comics. That's all it's going to be.
More than that is literally number one.
Mm-hmm.
That you're asking about. What's that Fat Nerd Girl comic? I might check that out. And it is available on Comixology for $1.
It's also the physical version's $10, just because that's the reality.
Paper, shipping.
Yeah,
they've got to print it for you. Yeah, but that print on demand is pretty handy.
Yeah, it's nice. I actually really do like having a physical copy of the comics I made. It's like, wow, this is cool. The thing is that when I read it, I read the digital version. Yeah. But it's nice to have that option for both too. So, because that's one thing I do have to admit I really like about Amazon, is that it at least lets me do that. I remember Dean, you were asking earlier about or was it Vicky? You were asking about the process of getting it on there. I gotta say, the process was a nightmare. That's all I have to say. Getting it on there, it was just a big nightmare.
Yeah.
But it is there, and from what I've seen, everybody who's gotten a physical copy has been extremely pleased with it.
Yeah, the comic looked good. It came out really good, and it's still a decent enough price point. I do wish it was cheaper, but again, it's the cost of the printing is like half of the price of the book itself.
Wow.
And then another big chunk of that is how much Amazon takes. So that's for a $10 for the physical edition, I only see $2 of that.
We'll get you sold enough books, and that'll all add up, and you can
Yeah.
pay for an artist for your next one.
Yeah, that would certainly be nice. Donating to our Patreon would also help for that. But and plus, if there's any artists, it's hard to ask for artists who are interested because the sort of circle of artists around this place is it's kind of odd because again, Arc Soleil was like a really lucky find, and his style fits really nicely because there's that hint of anime influence, but it's also very European, and I like how it looks. I like the detail of it. Looks excellent, especially that physical edition of Villains of the Snow Sea. It's a really cool looking comic, even though it doesn't exactly fit properly. Even, but anyways,
But it's brown letters on a blue background.
oh yeah, it
That
doesn't
just
pop.
isn't that doesn't pop at all.
Even though it absolutely objectively does by any
By any objective measure.
yes.
That is the way it should
They're
work.
color opposites. It can't help but pop. Anyways, good.
I couldn't help it but tossing that in
Yeah,
there.
it's worth joking about because it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life.
I liked the review. I also, if you ever want to know what literally is like, just be sure to listen to a review about a tweet. Because that's always
Yeah, reviewing
helpful.
tweets is the best way to find out about a comic.
And remember, when your character is talking through their braces, it's actually racist.
It's racist. It's the worst. It's actually the worst form of racism. I mean, might as well drove a cattle car of Jews up into a gas chamber.
I actually have one last question for you,
Okay.
Thomas. What did Comic Book Hut ever do to you? Just want to ask that. I feel like
I have no idea, actually. Aside from just being boring in general, like
I'm
whole
just
thing
saying
was-
you came at him pretty hard, Thomas, and he did nothing. He's a good boy. Yeah,
he didn't do nothing.
he didn't do nothing.
I mean, I don't know. I guess the worst thing about Comic Hut that he did or I did was Tim and Mark asked me to write a comic for them. That I think might be the worst thing.
You monster.
He even earned a mug design. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the blocked by Comic Hut, which I guess I do have to buy, but then there's like 2 or 3 others I have to. I still have the blocked by Ethan Van Sciver one, which is like, as far as I'm concerned, that's the only one I really need.
They're all sort of trickled down from there,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be loaded up with
Yeah.
mugs if I had to buy all the ones that you sell.
Right now there is a complete set of 4, which I was told by Stu earlier. I am the original Etsy girl because of my mugs.
Oh. Well,
But yeah, so there is a complete set of 4. That's the pinned tweet on my Twitter if anybody's interested. We've got Donald, the Hut, Liam, of course, the
Liam.
savior of comics, and
Yes.
the original Ethan Van Sciver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to warn people, somebody, Lotus Petal, looking forward to part 2 of Villains of the Snow Sea. I do have to say the explicit content warning is going to be ramped up by like 1,000% in chapter 2.
Awesome.
But that is something that's one thing that I didn't get to even talk about. Is that's one thing that the original fans of Laylee, going back to the old blog days, really wanted to see, was not just a comic starring her, but like a dirty comic starring her. Because it was something that I always talked about and promised, is like she's kind of a sex symbol in a way, and I wanted to have some, there's a lot of really graphic art of her, and I wanted to have a comic that had some really graphic moments, or at least one. The comic's not going to be wall-to-wall porn every single issue, but
Boo! All I want is wall-to-wall
Boo!
porn.
No, just
Boo!
well,
kidding.
the next chapter 2, is going to be extremely graphic. So just so people are warned, I don't want anyone going into that surprised.
I thought this was family friendly.
It's not even. I mean, you can kind of see by chapter 1 like how tight her outfit is, which is, it's not even canonically supposed to be that tight, but it looks so good. I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I didn't tell him to change it, and I never would. I'm gonna objectify you so hard. Yeah, that's actually a line from technically the first Laylee comic, which is on Gumroad. Actually, it's called "Kill Everything," and it was a comic jam that fans of Laylee and fans of the blog donated art to, just sort of for fun and in a way for practice. And so a lot of people did like a whole first chapter of "Kill Everything," which stars Laylee as the main character, and there's nudity in that too. Some really good pages, in fact. But also, like, it was a comic jam, so it was a lot of playing around, some people experimenting, some good pages. Even the pages that aren't great though are cool to see. Just people sort of experimenting and trying out drawing a comic for fun. And that's $0. That's free on our Gumroad. If you check out the Gumroad for King Wolf, I think it is. You can find that one for free, and it's just like 17 pages.
Awesome. Well,
And that was the first official Laylee comic where Laylee actually appeared in a comic. But of course, I had written other comics with Laylee before that, so there's that.
And then I think one last question, and this comes from the chat: is Laylee going to stab her enemies with rock hard nipples?
No, she doesn't do that. She might stab a friend with rock hard nipples.
close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough. Well, thank you so much, Thomas.
Yeah, it's always great to be on, and especially great to be on and talk like actual comics for a change and just goof around. And I'm always available to be to agree to be on streams and stuff. It's just that most people don't seem to ask me. Nasser does ask me usually a lot, but he might have to make some other friends, so I understand that. and I don't blame him at all for any of that because he was just straight up robbed. And if he has to fucking at least pretend to be friends with people for a little bit to try and actually get paid off, then what's right is right.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it either.
Mm.
Yeah, I just don't really
It's a
care
really
too much about
shitty.
it.
Yeah, it's
shitty situation.
a terrible situation. Like being stolen from, and then having the people who stole from you just all pat each other on the back and celebrate how you were robbed. And now they're acting like they're going to be friends. Of course, all of us know, including Nasser, knows that it's fake. It's not real. It's not a real offer of friendship. It's just a display of sort of supremacy.
Dominance.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely kayfabe.
Yeah, which is again, that's part of the tragedy of it. That is that people have to do that to make comics for some reason. For us, it's not, our comics, not anything about that. It's just about the actual comics.
Well, like on some real stuff though, it's like, okay, but EVS can't get your money for you from Donald.
Yeah, you can't force like a person who's been training to be dishonest through practice and repeated behavior. He can't then say like, okay, now all the opposite of the stuff I've been telling you to do. Now do the opposite of that.
Well, like, I mean, regardless of that, like, Donald still hasn't, offered to give Nasser the money he's owed.
Yeah, I don't think Donald even understands what he's supposed to be doing at this point. But like he's completely just out to lunch on this, and he doesn't know
to lunch like with his wife's boyfriend.
He's having a pizza out to lunch.
Is he having the pizza, or is he shoving more Brutus trading cards down his gullet?
Yeah, that's the
yeah, that was fucking weird.
with trading cards. It's funny, he's got like, Brutus trading cards, and I was like, wow, he just came out with those, but he still hasn't put out the comic. And you were like, this was from March, and it's like he had trading cards for a comic in March that he still hasn't delivered. That's fucking pathetic. But it's also completely predictable.
Well, I mean, he doesn't really have those trading cards anymore. I think he got hungry.
Them all.
Yeah,
just ate them all.
Yeah,
He got hungry.
Maybe that's what happened to like Nasser's 5 to 10 grand.
He ate the money. He was freebasing pennies. Last seen freebasing pennies apparently. It's also he looks sickly. Like you look at Donald, he looks like he has some kind of genuinely though, seriously, the dark circles under his eyes. He looks sick. Like he's been unwell for a really long time. Like he has some kind of chronic disease. Not like it's some kind of
either that or he's huffing paint.
Yeah, but it's like not even as a joke. Like he has AIDS or something. But I seriously think he has some kind of serious.
Yeah, he doesn't look right.
Yeah.
He does look like, I mean, it's either that or like he hasn't slept in 20 years.
Yeah, that's also what it looks like too. It could be from a lot of things.
Yeah, like his wife's boyfriend just pounding his wife all night, and he just stays
Keeping
up
him
can't
awake.
sleep
to it.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's too bad. That really is.
Hey,
tragic.
you guys are doing it right next to me, and they're like, "Shut up and watch."
Gotta be kidding.
Well, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and say goodnight now.
Yeah.
I think we've taken this as far as we should. Or we'll be at
We went
this for like
further than
another
we should.
hour.
Anyone who wants to talk more comics, though, go ahead and ask, I guess. And we'll
And
see you next time.
I did forget to put a link to Thomas's Discord in the
Oh,
description.
that's fine. We don't need any more visitors.
Yeah. But you can always hit him up on Twitter.
Yeah, if you want. Go. Feel free. I'm fine with that.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.